Live edition of the Patriots Beat Podcast here on the CLNS Media Network. It is Brian Hines with Pats Pulpit, back with Alex Barth from 98.5, the Sports Hub. We figured we would jump on here very quickly to break down what was a busy day down at One Patriots Place out of nowhere on this Wednesday as the coaching staff continues to come along. We got some clarity on the front office and some new voices that are coming to the front office. And we'll start there because that was kind of the big thing of the day, and it kind of confirmed what we already saw coming, which was Elliot Wolf, who had his fingertips all over these staff hirings and these guys that are coming in that have ties to the Packers. And it looks like Elliot Wolf now is the de facto GM. He might not get the title, we'll see on that, but it was Ian Rappaport who kind of confirmed everything. He said Wolf will be in charge of the personnel with control of the 53-man roster, working closely with Gerard Mayo. Matt Groh will handle most of the college scouting, which we saw him down at the Senior Bowl last week. He'll work with Pat Stewart, who's heavily involved in all aspects. So starting to get the makings of the structure within the Patriots front office. And as we, again, kind of all expected, it's Elliot Wolf at the top of that structure.
Yeah, so I can't stress this enough. Let me start here. The general manager title, like whether Elliot Wolf is actually called general manager, is purely academic at this point. It really doesn't mean anything. The whole, we've talked about this so much, Brian. Final say. That's what it all came down to. That's what this report was today. Elliot Wolf is running the personnel department. He's organizing it. He has final say over what happens. Matt Groh is handling the college scouting. So essentially they switched jobs from last year. Matt Groh is going to handle and whenever the titles come, they come. They may have already been changed, or actually, no, I think Mark Daniels reported that the new titles haven't been given out. They're going to change their titles at some point when they finalize the front office. We'll probably get them in like April. The distribution of labor has been laid out internally. Like it is not a rudderless ship. Okay. Everybody knows what they're doing at this point. And it seems like everybody's pretty much reporting to Matt Groh. And I think that includes Gerard Mayo. Now the word collaborative was thrown around in there, and there is a level of collaboration in it, but I think I've laid this scenario out, right? Matt Groh and Gerard Mayo want one player. Cameron Williams and Alonzo Highsmith want the other. Elliot Wolf is your deciding vote. That's basically what we learned today. And it's important. That's important. And they have, Robert Kraft said back when Gerard Mayo was introduced, they would have that role decided before any big decisions have to be made. They got it decided. And before any big decisions had to be made, like they're in good shape. Wolf's also clearly helping build out or leading the charge, building out the coaching staff, all of that. This is his team. It's his show. He's running things. He has controlled the roster. He has controlled the coaching staff. I'm sure, at least on the coaching staff, Gerard Mayo is being consulted, but this is who's in charge. We have the answer to that.
Yep. And I feel like, a lot of people might be hesitant about how they feel about that because he's been here, right? This is just kind of an internal promotion, but you look at Elliot Wolf's career and his path, he has worked up from, pro personnel to assistant director to director of player personnel to director of football operations. Then he got a chance in Cleveland as the assistant general manager, and now he's been here the last 4 years as a consultant, as a director of scouting. He's taken GM jobs with other teams. I think he was, interviewed with Minnesota a few years ago. So he's highly respected around the league, as it seems, as, a scout, as an executive, as one of these personnel type of guys. So he's worthy, whether the title comes or not. His career path has made him worthy to be a GM, and that's what it seems like he is here. Again, we'll see if they actually name a general manager, which the Crafts, haven't really done since they've owned this team. But Wolf is a deserving candidate, I would say.
Yeah, he's as deserving as they had in the building. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, if they could have gotten Adam Peters, or somebody who'd run an organization before. But I mean, Matt Groh's resume, and how many times am I going to do that, dude? Like, literally, when I was writing today, I had to go back through and change half the Grohs to Wolfs. Elliot Wolf's resume is that of somebody who it's time to become a general manager. I mean, he was a director of player personnel or pro personnel to some extent for about 10 years with the Packers. He was an assistant general manager with the Browns. Like, this is not somebody that they are just this is not Matt Patricia becoming offensive coordinator. This is not just pulling somebody out of nowhere and giving them a job they're not ready for. Elliot Wolf's entire background leads to this point. Could you argue, and Brian, we did this precursor, I think, after the Mayo press conference, that we both would have liked to see them maybe go external. But if they were going to stay in the building, I think Elliot Wolf was the best candidate. I think he's a better candidate than Groh. I do really like Cameron Williams. He's probably not ready yet. Maybe he gets there at some point. I think he will get there at some point, but not right now. I mean, they didn't have a ton of guys in the building. They had a very small personnel department by nature of the way they operated. So I think Wolf's up for the challenge. We'll see. It's a tough task ahead, but I think of all the outcomes, like, and again, I think some people thought they were going to make Gerard Mayo de facto GM like Belichick. He's not ready for that. I can't imagine he's ready for that. He said just last year he started to be involved with the draft process. Elliot Wolf's been in draft rooms for 10, 15 years now. So that's the kind of guy you're looking at here. Now, the question is, what does that mean, right? There was the report over the weekend that he wants to tackle at 3, Joe Alt. So we'll see if that weighs out. Because again, he has final say, but I do think it will still be collaborative. And I think if everybody else in the room says Drake May, or everybody else in the room says Jaden Daniels, or everybody else in the room says Marvin Harrison Jr., that this is kind of where I think it has a chance to differentiate from Belichick. Because if everybody else in the room said Deebo Samuel and Bill said N'Keal Harry, they were taking N'Keal Harry. I think what this is, just trying to read between the lines, is Elliot Wolf's more the tiebreaker than the ultimate decider. He's organizing everything too. So that's one part of it. He's going to organize it, and he's going to be like, all right, this is the kind of players we want, right? So it's the way it used to be was Bill would go to whoever the director of player personnel was, whether it was Groh, whether it was Caserio. Who am I missing in the middle there? Why am I blanking on his name? Went to Vegas.
Ziegler.
Whether it was Ziegler, Bill would basically go to that guy and be like, all right, we want, fast wide receiver. We want, a man corner. We want, and I'm way oversimplifying here, but, we want like a strong side edge rusher. And they would go do their research and they'd come back and they'd be like, all right, for the strong side edge rusher, here's 5 players. And Bill would look and decide which one of the 5 players he wanted, right? That's basically how that would work. And they would give their recommendations, but Bill would basically be like, okay, that's the guy. Now what I think it's going to be like is Wolf kind of lays out, hey, this is who we want. Groh and Cameron Williams and Pat Stewart go find the guys, and they come back. And then they say, here's what we found. What do we want to do? And what the group wants, right? And I don't know if it'll, again, I'm oversimplifying and there's more nuance to it than this, but I think it's basically like if they can't decide when those guys come back and there's still no consensus, I think that's where Elliot Wolf has the power to say, this is what we're doing.
Yep. Which it all goes back to that, collaborative approach they keep talking about, but you need that one guy that has final say in case you get to that situation.
You can't be deadlocked. And I guess you have to have, it's funny. I said this, I was explaining this to a friend, the whole thing about, all right, well, if 5 people want this and 5 people want that, here's the tiebreaker. So he goes, why don't you just have an odd number of people in the draft? I never even thought of that, but I don't know. Maybe you need, I don't know, but whatever happens, maybe they do have an odd number of people and final say doesn't become an issue. But yeah,
maybe they have like a ranking, and then each person has like a point total depending on their ranking, and then it divvies up like that.
Somebody has to be in charge. You can't have everybody just on their own doing what they want to do. Somebody's got to be organizing, making sure all the bases are covered, and that's basically what Elliot Wolf is doing.
Yep. You mentioned Cameron Williams, who you're a fan of. I'm a fan of. Seems like one of these young, kind of up and coming guys. He wasn't specifically mentioned in Rappaport's tweet. Ian mentioned Elliot Wolf, obviously, Matt Groh, and added Pat Stewart would be heavily involved in all aspects. Were you surprised not to see Cam Williams in that mix? Or was that just, I can only fit 3 names in this tweet. Cam Williams is still going to be involved in the scouting department.
No, I was a little surprised. He's a guy that, from everything we've heard, has been a fast riser in the organization. He was liked in the organization. Maybe it was just Bill. I mean, that's possible. But I mean, from everything I've heard, like, he's well liked in the building. People believe him. He's young. He hasn't been doing this very long. And you look at the other guys that Rap Sheet mentioned. I guess that Grove's been doing this for 15 years. Highsmith's been, in front offices for 25 years. Pat Stewart's been around a long time. He was a VP of player personnel in Carolina. Grove maybe hasn't been around as long, but he was the director of player personnel last year. So whether you could say he was accelerated to that role, like he's had it, Cameron Williams maybe doesn't have the depth to his resume that those other guys do. So I wonder if that was it. I hope it's not that he's going to have a decreased role, because I think he's a former player.
Yep.
Played in college, a local guy who ties the organization. His dad played for the team, Brent Williams. Again, just from the people I talked to, just a bright football mind, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I hope he stays involved. I certainly hope he stays involved. I was a little surprised to not see him get a mention in there.
Yep. Agree with you. Hope he still has a big role in things. But you mentioned Highsmith. Alonzo Highsmith was one of the guys they brought in to the organization today in a front office role. I think it was, I forget the exact title, senior. I have it right here. Senior.
Hang on. Will you figure that out? You want to hear from FanDuel?
Sure. Let's do that.
Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers join today and you get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/Boston to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/Boston. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
All right. So again, Wolf in charge. They did add 2 new voices, or I guess one voice they were familiar with, and now one voice who is going to take a big role here as a senior personnel executive. That was the exact title. Alonzo Highsmith. He was a former player in the league. He's been in front offices. He was with Grow in Green Bay for a long time. He followed Grow then to the Cleveland Browns for 2 years, and then he was with Seattle, but most recently he was at the collegiate level at the University of Miami. So really experienced executive. I think it was Dane Brugler, the Athletic broke the news. Brugler was saying at Miami he was really known for his kind of evaluation. He was big with the transfer portal, picking out some of these players. Miami has had some talented classes the last 2 years. So just an experienced voice and an external voice that, again, another guy Wolf is familiar with. Oh, you're muted.
I don't know. First of all, certified badass.
Yeah.
Played at the U in the 80s when that meant something. Was their leading rusher when they won a natty in 83. Go check out the U 30 for 30 if you haven't, and the U part 2. Played for you, and that meant something. 3rd overall pick in the NFL draft, which, okay, cool. So the Patriots already added, they're going to add 2 3rd overall picks this year.
Go.
How many teams get to do that? Was worked in the NFL for 25 years, was a boxer at one point. He knocked out Mark Gastineau in 3 rounds, which is sick. But in all seriousness, yeah, he seems to have a knack for talent evaluation. He was in Green Bay for a long time. He was a scout when Green Bay was building that thing up, like the Rodgers era teams. Went to the U. They had 2 top 10 recruiting classes the last 2 years. So he helped in that regard. He was also seen as a culture builder, which Alex Van Pelt is a guy that has been categorized that way. Now you bring Highsmith in, also former player. I'm excited to see what he brings. Look, this is a guy that's seen a lot of football. He's been in a lot of different football environments. He's held a lot of different roles in the sport. He's going to be, I think, a valuable resource for some of these guys in the front office. A guy like Matt Groh, a guy like Elliot Wolf, who are in first-time roles. I think he's going to be a really valuable resource for them. I like the hire. I'm excited to see what he brings.
Yeah.
And maybe he brings Cam Kitchens. I don't know how that would work, but
Cam Ward next year. There you
go.
In 2025.
So I did see somebody said he was a big part of recruiting Cam Ward to Miami.
Okay.
So that, for whatever that's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely get those Miami prospects on your radar. I know you tweeted out the list. You love Cam Kitchens.
None of them really make sense for the Patriots, though,
yeah,
unfortunately.
I know. I keep going back to Cam Kitchens, and he is awesome. He just doesn't make sense in this draft because he'll probably be a top 50 safety pick, which they really can't afford to do. But yeah, I thought the Highsmith hire was one of the more exciting ones of the day. As you said, culture builder. He really good eye for talent, it seems, helping build that Miami program up. Seems like he just did a lot for that whole program. They mentioned, he did stuff in the administrative functions. He helped the budget, helped staffers on and off the field. So just someone who was really involved. And again, comes from, I mean, he's been doing this 20 plus years, so really experienced. So that's exciting to get someone like that in the building. And, I like people who like come from the college, have some college perspective too, can help in the draft. So
Yeah.
I thought that was a good voice to kind of
look
in here.
I'll see, in all seriousness, and I joke about Cam Kitchens before people tear my head off for saying they should draft a safety in the top 50. He was an advisor in all ways to Mario Cristobal at Miami. They had to prepare for Drake May at some point, and he may have we talked about this when Bill O'Brien came from Alabama, not just his insight on the Alabama players, but his insight on some of the other SEC defensive players having faced them. There definitely is, I wonder, probably an element of that too here with Highsmith.
Yeah. I tweeted, I went back. He played Drake May twice. May won both. He threw like 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, had some completion accuracy issues at times. But yeah, that's just another piece to that kind of evaluation puzzle, and see how that kind of just unfolds as you go through the process here. But the other voice they brought into the front office was Bobby Brown in an executive role. He spent nearly 7 years here with the team, and then left for the Houston Texans last year. So he spent 1 year, and now he comes back.
Yeah.
Seemed like he was big in Houston in the salary cap department, helping them, go through the budget and the finances. So bringing back him into the fold here as well.
Yeah, I think my understanding, he's more of a logistics guy than a football ops guy. I mean, the salary cap kind of goes both ways. That's more towards the football side. But like when he was here the first time, he was working in equipment, and then he was working in travel.
Yeah.
So he's the one, handling the travel logistics and getting the team on the road and stuff like that. So I don't think he's somebody that's going to they're not bringing him into the room to ask who they should take third overall. But I think probably more of a logistics hire.
Yep. Agree with you there. So that's kind of the setup. That's the structure. That's what we're going through here with these front office. So I guess just like, what are your big picture kind of thoughts? Are you a fan of it, or were you expecting more when we started this process, or where are you kind of at?
Look, I talked about that. I still would have liked to see them add more of exterior presence, but knowing that was probably never on the table, like part of me was worried that Gerard Mayo was going to be, and everybody knows I like Gerard Mayo as the head coach. You're putting so much on his plate if you basically make him Bill at this point. Yep. So I like that they've kind of shuffled the structure in the front office. I do think Wolf makes more sense than Groh to run the department. I do, and this is going to be an unpopular take. I don't care. I like that we're going to get a chance to see what Matt Groh comes to the table without Bill Belichick overruling him. Because I've talked about this a lot. There's like breadcrumbs for Matt Groh, some that are out there, some that maybe aren't as much, that he maybe didn't agree with everything they did personnel-wise the last few years. Yep. And let's see. Like that's where I'm at with Groh. I'm not sitting here saying Matt Groh's going to build a Super Bowl winning team, but I think he deserves a shot in the role he's in right now, as college scouting director, because he helped with that 21 draft, which was good. The 22 draft obviously wasn't, but I think last year they were in the right direction. So under his leading the drafts, they went 2 for 3. Let's see what he can do. Kind of a little more freedom. But I do think it's to run the actual organization and not just player acquisition. Elliot Wolf makes a lot more sense. I hope Cameron Williams has a bigger role in it than maybe was illustrated today. I think we'll probably get the titles in April, would be my guess.
Well, we have
around when they update that,
like the director of player personnel before the draft.
Yeah,
right?
That's kind of,
but they can
flexible.
Yeah.
They can throw somebody up there. We'll talk to either Groh or we have to talk to somebody. Usually it's the GM, but they've never had a GM, right? So that's why it's kind of always been flexible. Somebody from personnel will do a press conference. It's usually in late March, early April. Last year last 2 years it was Groh.
Yeah, it was.
So That'll probably be Grow again, would be my guess. What's going to be really telling is they have to give us somebody each night after the draft. And in the past, so for the most part in the past, it was Bill after the first round, and then Nick Caserio, Dave Ziegler, Matt Groh, whoever the next 2 nights. Last year, I believe it was Groh all 3. I think Groh spoke after the first round last year. We didn't hear from Bill at all during the draft process.
I think Bill spoke once.
Did he? Okay, maybe
he
Bill
might have
still
been, he might have went on like day 3 though, because I remember specifically someone asked him like someone specifically asked him like, you used your first 3 picks on defense, why'd you do that? And he's like, oh, there's more than one way to build a football team on offense. So
wasn't it Groh that said that?
I thought that was Bill. Maybe I'm remembering things incorrectly though. But I thought Bill spoke at least. I thought he spoke at least once after one day of the draft last year.
He spoke. Is this from 22 or 23? I pulled up. Okay, yeah. So he spoke after day 2 last year.
Okay.
I think Groh spoke 1 and 3. I know Groh spoke 3. He might have spoke 1, but I'm curious, like, how does that work this year? Is it going to be Wolf, Groh, and Groh? Is it going to be all Groh? Is it going to be all Wolf? Will Gerard Mayo speak? Right? That I think is going to be very telling. Not that it'll ultimately mean anything, but I think you can infer things from the order in which they speak. But we'll also probably have the titles by then, so it may not matter either way.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you went into this and saying you weren't going to get like a GM, like an Adam Peters or one of those guys, I think this is, and you're going to stay internal for the most part, like Kraft said, I think this is a pretty good structure. You have a guy in Elliot Wolf who we went through his resume and he was, kind of raised outside of this organization. He's not just another Bill. He's in charge. Highsmith is a good addition. And I agree with you on Matt Wolf. That'll be Matt Wolf. Now the names are all over the place.
Yeah.
Matt Groh, seeing how he does with the draft. And Pat Stewart's a guy who's been around a lot. Like he was in Philly. He was in Carolina. Obviously he was here before that. And Cam Williams is an excited young guy. So I have some confidence, I guess I'll say, in this front office structure. So it'll be exciting to see how that turns out. And they have an important first test at their hands. So
yes,
we'll get right into it with them. But we'll briefly wrap this up. There were also 2, I guess, reported hires, or 1 reported coaching hire and 1 guy they're targeting. Quarterback coach TC McCartney, who was with the Cleveland Browns, and Alex Van Pelt as their tight ends coach. And then offensive line coach, or we didn't get officially if he's going to have the offensive line coach title. It looks that way though, but Scott Peters, who was the assistant under Van Pelt and Bill Callahan out there in Cleveland. So 2 more of those guys who are coming in to join Van Pelt's coaching staff here. Yeah.
So I said I thought the offensive line coach was more important than the quarterback's coach, and here we are. I like the hire. I like Peters. Now, a lot of the success they had in Cleveland was definitely Bill Callahan, who's a great offensive line coach. But you look at Scott Peters, kind of the way you looked at Cole Popovich and Carmen Bursillo in 2020 when they took over for Dante Scarnecchia. Was all right. They've been in his system. They've worked with him. How much of that can they replicate? And they did a pretty good job of it in the short time they were together. Obviously, COVID kind of put a spin on that. I think you're looking at the same thing with Peters. Like, how much can he replicate from Callahan? He has the martial arts background, the MMA background, the jiu-jitsu background. When it comes to teaching offensive line technique and hand placement and things like that and leverage, it all comes from the same tree. So I like the hire. When we were reacting to it live with Taylor, he was like the first guy I brought up. I think McCartney's an interesting one. All the hires they'd made up to that point were seemingly very quarterback development based. Van Pelt, McAdoo. This is a guy that's coached quarterbacks once in I think 10 or 12 years as a coach. He played quarterback at LSU, but he was a scout team quarterback. He never played in any games. If you look at his resume, he was a general offensive assistant in San Francisco with Shanahan for multiple years. He was then a quarterback coach. He was then a tight ends coach. His resume almost lines up perfectly to be an offensive coordinator, specifically a Shanahan McVay style offensive coordinator. You want a little more quarterback work. Like if they were to hire him as an OC, I'd say, I want him to have a little more experience working with the quarterbacks. I almost wonder if they know Van Pelt is essentially the QB coach, which I had talked about the other night. And this is kind of, all right, we're going to get him ready so that if it goes well with Van Pelt and he's out of here for a head coaching job in a year or two, we have a next guy. We have a clear next guy as the offensive coordinator. Because to me, TC McCartney makes more sense as like a developmental OC than he does as a quarterbacks coach. But you got to put him somewhere. There is no really assistant quarterbacks coach role. So you stick him as the quarterbacks coach where Van Pelt's going to have a big say anyway. And you get him ready. I think that would make some sense. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with him. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Like it's that thing where if it all goes best case scenario, it's going to look brilliant. If it doesn't, we're going to be sitting here saying, could they have had somebody with more experience in this position? So the jury's still out. Because they have Alex Van Pelt, ultimately I'm okay with it. If they had hired like Nick Caley, who didn't have experience working with quarterbacks, I'd be off on it a lot more. But I think having Van Pelt, you have the flexibility to do something like this with this position.
Yep. That's where I first went to, like a guy who could take over this offensive coordinator spot down the line. And you also have Ben McAdoo on the staff too, who could potentially help, an experienced guy who could potentially help and had the experience with quarterbacks. So that one will be interesting. I like the Scott Peters one. Obviously, like the jiu-jitsu stuff is really fun. He's won like 2 Brazilian world championships. We'll see if Joe Kim stays, who's been like that skill development coach on the Patriots lines for a while. Same type of thing with that mixed martial arts. So that'll be fun. He obviously had a lot of success in Cleveland, but now we'll see, can he do it without Bill Callahan? Because that's a big step down. And we could add that the guy they originally targeted, Andy Dickerson, ended up going to Cleveland to take their offensive line job. So he's going to run that room there. And again, Scott Peters didn't officially get the offensive line coach title in these reports, but it looks like where that one's going to head. So they keep filling out that staff. I believe we're down to running backs coach, wide receivers,
running backs,
coach,
wide receivers, tight end, and then linebacker, corner, safety.
Yep. So still some names to come through here, but we will wrap it up there. Again, just a quick one today to recap all the news that went down today, but we'll be back on here tomorrow. Stay tuned for what time. We'll talk about all that in a little bit more depth and anything else that happens to break in these next 24 hours, because at this rate, who knows. But in the meantime, you can follow Alex on Twitter at RealAlexBarth. Go to 985thesportshub.com to read more about all those guys we just talked about from today. You can follow me on Twitter at I am Brian Hines, and head over to patspulpit.com to read my work over there as well. Thank you all, as always, for tuning in here today, and we will see you guys tomorrow.